obviously this has a lot of action and fast-paced editing. So how do you maintain that balance, I guess, between fast-paced editing and ensuring though that the audience can still follow the action? That's the thing, right? It's like, I mean, there's certainly obviously the action elements, but you still want people, the audience, to be able to orient themselves and right, know where they are and actually know what's happening.
Well, yeah, I've cut a lot of action scenes for a lot of different shows, and what I always go back to is story. Story to me is king, and if it doesn't move the story forward, then why are we here? What is the point of this scene? What is this fight scene doing to our antagonist, or our protagonist, or our antagonist? How's it moving everything forward? So that's always what I'm thinking about when I'm cutting these scenes. Lots of different. It sometimes can get a little tedious. It's just one person fighting after one punch after another. I always think about that movie with Ben Affleck, where they're walking. John Goodman's walking through a fight scene, and it's just on the Warner Brothers set, and they're just like constant, punching each other. It's like, yeah, that just kind of gets boring after a while. So I'm always trying to keep the fight moving as quickly as possible, and move the story forward.
How about, like, I mean, obviously when you have maybe like big set pieces, right? And I think also like maybe knowing kind of where to place the audience and knowing, like, literally knowing where, like, I think it's also important to see, like, know where certain like characters are standing in position, right? So I guess as the audience, we're not like lost and we can follow that action.
Well, a lot of times when I'm cutting an action scene, I try to establish where everybody is pretty early on. Maybe not the first shot, but definitely I have a little OCD about geography, and I try to, by edit 3, by my third edit in the scene, specifically action scenes, I want everyone to be planted. I want everybody to know where the geography is. I want everybody to understand this person's over here, this person's over here. There's a car filled with explosives over here. And then once we've established all that, then I'm a firm believer that you can go anywhere you want. You've established where everybody is, and now all bets are off. You can go anywhere. And it doesn't hurt to reestablish where people are. It doesn't hurt to like pop wide or use eye lines, eye contact between people to establish where, keep people understanding where, keep the audience oriented so they're not lost. But I also try to keep the action moving. I try to keep it exciting. Sometimes disorientation helps you. It's one of those things you just sort of have to feel out while you're editing. And I always try to remind myself there really isn't any rules. Understand the rules. Know why you're breaking the rules, but don't be strict with the rules.
Oh man, I love that, and I agree with you. I'm all about breaking rules, but it's good to first though. It is like understand those fundamentals, right? I mean, like why they exist, and then like you said, but don't be restricted by that. Let it go, right?
Yeah, I think you have to understand what you're doing. The breaking the line, which I do all the time. There has to be a valid reason to do it, and you have to somehow figure out a clever way to do it. But I don't shy away from it. I try to embrace that stuff because it makes your scenes more dynamic when you do unconventional type of editing.
Well, we talk about, I guess, pacing and cutting, just cutting quickly, doing, fast action sequences. But also, like, when do you know when to, hold on to a shot, say during an action sequence? So not only just simply like cutting fast action, but also, excuse me, at times, say, lingering, say more on a shot. Like when do you know when it's the right moment?
Well, on one piece, I have a pretty good idea what the plan is. What is the stunt? What's the choreography? And then I get the scene, and for whatever reason they didn't shoot something, or they pivoted and they shot something a little differently, or something. Yeah, and usually it's much better than what they originally set out to do. And what I try to do is when I'm looking at the dailies, uh, make it exciting. And if I can find a cool move where I can let somebody do the move from start to finish, I'll go. I'll take it. I'll do it. I'll allow that edit just to run its course. To me, it's always better to let the action play out as opposed to trying to manufacture something with an edit. But sometimes making it rapid fire editing also makes it pretty exciting. And one of the things that I do a lot, or actually all the time when I'm cutting an action scene is I try to make everyone strong. So I'll do like speed effects, and I do it in a way so I want to be careful because you can go too far with that stuff, and you don't want someone to look like Benny. I'm a fan of him, but I don't want my heroes to look like Benny Hill. So you got to be careful with that stuff, and I try to push it as far as I can go with speed effects until I go, okay, I broke the shot. Let's go back. Let's backtrack. So then I start doing that, and I also do on moments of impact, like if someone takes a punch, I might take a frame out just to show that there's force there. And then I also try to make sure that they're strong. Make sure whoever is throwing the punch, the kick, or whatever comes across strong. Or most of the times actors are not trained fighters, and it's your responsibility as the editor to make them look like they know what they're doing. So if they throw a kick and the kick is not landing for whatever reason, they were afraid that to hit the other actor, you have to figure out a creative way to for them to look like they actually kicked the person. And that could be with a variety of ways of doing that. Speed effects, quick cuts, or even crossing the line sometimes might even actually do that.
Well, I love those tips, for getting action sequences, but also maybe now for our audience, what are some common, I guess, pitfalls, what to avoid, say, when maybe editing action sequences?
Well, with every action sequence, fight scenes, shootouts, chase scenes, car chase. I've done a lot of car chases. I always look for, you have to look, there's geography, obviously, understanding where everybody is. Eye line is also very important, making sure people are looking at each other. But the most important thing for me is cause and effect. What if someone throws a punch, I have to see the effect of that. If someone fires a gun at somebody, I have to see where that bullet had happened. And that's very important for me to understand, because a lot of times fight sequences are very chaotic. You want them to be chaotic. A lot of times people say, let's you cut the fight scene and it's very straightforward, and somebody will come and say, well, let's mess it up. Okay, let's do that. But there has to be a through line of cause and effect so that we understand what each one of these beats are doing. So that's pretty important for me. You try to make things exciting, and a lot of things. I also try to do the rule of threes. If I'm doing I cut a show over the summer, and there was this big explosion, and they shot it in 3 different angles, and I was like, wow. I was looking at the footage. I was like, I'm not really quite sure how to use all 3 of these, because it's the same moment over and over again. And what I found was if I just sort of blew up the shot a little bit or adjusted the angle a little bit, I can make it look like that it was just a much bigger explosion than just using one shot. And it was pretty exciting to do that, and it stayed in the cut.
Well, I mean, like talking about like same, you know, having multiple cameras and obviously having, if for an action sequence, maybe have a ton of footage. I mean, like, what's your approach to like say dailies and you have all this footage? How do you go by organizing everything and then dwindling that down to, you know, obviously now a cool action sequence?
Well, it depends on how they shoot it. I've been on shows where they shoot action sequences with the stunt doubles and they shoot it from start to finish in a wide. And that's a pretty good way to understand what the intent of the scene is. You obviously can't use the entire shot, but it'll at least keep you planted on what the intent is for each one of these moves. And they might shoot specials of, you know, a punch or a kick or somebody being thrown off a cliff or whatever, and you know that that shot has to be used, and then you somehow have to figure out how to keep everything out, start whittling it down and making it this exciting fight scene. And depending on how they shoot it, sometimes they use the actors to do this. Sometimes they use majority of the stunt doubles. But one of the important things also with for me for fight scenes is I have to see our actors' faces. I think that's really important, so we understand that the illusion of them doing this is there. And you know, it could be something as simple as having a stunt double do the move, and at the very last beat of that move, you cut to our, you know, actor or actress or whomever finishing the move. And because it was a quick edit, people think, well, you know, our lead actor just did this amazing move. And it's if you can pull it off with quick edits, it's usually pretty seamless. So that would definitely be something that I would try to do. I also, when I'm cutting these scenes, is I look for when I start putting it together, I really try to make sure there's peaks and valleys. I don't want, for me generally, I don't want the scene to be 100% intensity all the time, because then just becomes wallpaper. And I want to feel the intensity shift. And that comes into play with pace. So how do you do that? How do you shift the pace and have these moments of levity? You know, you try to find some character moments, some interesting dialogue. Hopefully, your writer, the showrunners of my show are really good on One Piece. Are really good at throwing these funny little one-liners in the middle of a fight sequence to give that levity, and you mix that up with these. Luffy, for example, does these really outlandish, rubbery fight, big stretchy fight moves, and when you pair that with, you know, a joke that he's going to throw out, it helps shift that intensity. And it also helps with the character. It gives reason for being in this action sequence, and it moves the story forward.
Yeah, I guess how do you actually incorporate that character development into action scenes? Like, you know, with editing, how do you find that moment? How do you know it's like, all right, this is maybe where it could put in?
You try to, you know, when you for me, when I'm cutting fight scenes or any action sequence, I generally put it together relatively quickly, and I don't necessarily, on my first pass, I don't necessarily think about those moments. I'm just trying to get the blocking down. I'm trying to get the beats down. I'm trying to understand, you know, where's everybody going to be, and then based on the script, there'll probably be a couple of lines that they intended to put in there, and then I start whittling it down. I get the action scene, the action in the fight to where I think it works, and then I throw in the line. And usually I look at this. Once I have it all put together, I usually look at it and go, oh, this isn't good. What have I done? I can't believe I can't believe I screwed
Yeah.
this up. And then when I was the scene that I'm about to show you, um, I remember I cut the scene and I was like, oh no, I don't know what to say about the scene. And then I found this music cue from our composers from a different show. Sonia and Gianna are our composers on One Piece, and we have their library. And I threw it in, and I play things really loud when I'm by myself, and the whole house was shaking. And I threw it in, and I was just like, oh wow, this is so good. This is like, and if I can see that the beats are hitting somewhat with the music, and I didn't cut it to the music, I can sort of see, okay, my rhythms are sort of locked in. They're working. I might have to finesse a couple of things here or there, or maybe if I want to get this hit, the sound hit to fall right in line here, I might have to finesse something. But that's usually a good way for me to see that something is flowing uh, properly. However, I worked on shows where the show I just did, I did this big giant action sequence, and I decided not to put any music in there, and that was a little bit of a tricky thing. How does that work? And I used the rhythms of the actors to sort of be my tempo, and it's one of those things you just sort of have to feel out. Just sort of, do I feel like we are lingering anywhere too long? Is this shot starting to outstay its welcome? And as soon as I start to think like that, I start trimming it down. And it's you just have to listen to the voice inside your head. When I was first starting out, I would have these thoughts when I'd look at this cut. I look at my cuts, and I would just sort of like ignore it. It took some time for me to really embrace my creative, my critical eye, I guess, of my inner voice to really understand that no, if you start thinking like that, you have to address it because somebody else is going to say it, and you don't want that.
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, look, it's just editing in general. Just it's about that gut feeling. And
Yeah.
and I'm just curious. Do you ever like scare your neighbors, like when you're cutting action at home? They
So
call the cops on
so
you or something?
So the funny thing is when I cut the scene I'm about to show you, I put this cue in, and I was playing. Nobody was home. It was just me and the dog. And it was a Friday night around like 6 o'clock, and I was playing the music so loud, the house was shaking, and I was just like, "Well, whatever. I'm by myself." And then the doorbell did ring.
Oh yeah. I figured I
and
asked, man. They said you like to play things loud.
I was like, uh-oh. And fortunately, it was just a neighbor inviting me over for a barbecue. But
Oh,
I thought it was maybe like the police coming to knock up, like, what's
yeah.
going on in here? So no, that fortunately that hasn't happened yet. But yeah, it might.
Well, awesome, Eric. Thank you for sharing that insight into just cutting action. I mean, it's obviously is a lot that goes behind a cool action sequence. So it's great to hear you share some tips here in your process, and also telling our audience also maybe what things to avoid.
Thanks,
So
Joaquin. I appreciate it.
yeah, no. So why don't we just check out a clip? And maybe we could talk about it. Dive deeper into this.
That was a particularly exciting moment for me because I was cutting that at home, and working from home sometimes could be tricky. You don't have somebody to say, "Hey, what do you?" It's not easy to grab someone and say, "What do you think of this?" So I was looking at the scene. And my initial pass, I was like, "Oh no, what have I done?" And then when I put that music cue in, it just sort of like I got so jazzed. I was just like, "This is so much fun," and I start thinking about sound design and what's this going to do and what's that going to do. I don't know if you can hear it, but when Luffy smacks the guy in the head at the very end, there's because he says "gum gum bell." That's Luffy's thing. He calls out his powers, and it's sort of, you could sort of make it out, but you can hear when he hits them. There's a ring of a bell, and that's something we just sort of snuck in there, and it was just like, it's like this little silly thing, but for me, it was like, this is so much fun. I was just having a blast doing that type of stuff. Um, when I was cutting the scene, I tried to, like I said earlier, I tried to keep Luffy and Kuro strong because he's also a threat. And I did that with speed effects. I was taking out frames on impact when someone would land a punch or land a hit or land a jump. I would take out frames on just at that right moment so that hopefully the audience isn't seeing it. And just to give everyone a little bit more strength. And I also was playing with speed. Sometimes on fight scenes, they shoot the entire scene at a variable speed. So it gives you the capability to go to slow-mo if you want to. Obviously, you don't want to do that. But if you could find a great moment to go into slow-mo and it really helps the character, I'd say go for it. I used to be, I would do like the Matrix move where I would do like a ramp, and so it'd be at speed, and then also you would go into slow-mo and do it, and that still works. It depends what's happening, but now I've sort of just embraced using the shot from start to finish in slow-mo if I can do it. And the shot where the blades almost come at Luffy and almost get him at his face. That was shot, I believe, at 72 frames. And what I did was in the shot preceding that, I sped up the last few frames so that when we cut to the slow-mo shot, you could feel that adjustment of slow-mo. And you could feel that there's been a major shift here. And then when I come back to the next shot, again, I'm doing the exact same thing on the incoming frames of the next shot, which was shot at 24 frames. I sped those up just a little bit, just so that you could feel the shift. I'm also hiding the stunt double. The stunt double obviously is doing the flips and he's rolling around on the floor. And these are terrific moves. These are trained professionals, and the stunt actors are I'm always amazed at the things that they do. But what I'm doing is when they're finishing their move, I try to come back to Luffy just for the last beat or two, so it looks like he was doing the move, and I'm doing that all with editing. And when you see it all put together and you put all the sound and music, like, this is just so exciting to watch. Luffy grabbing Kuro's arms at the very end, his big hero moment. He's grabbing his arms, and I think you can see it, that those moves are sped up. There are frames being taken out there, but I think it works because Kuro comes across pretty powerful, and Luffy just looks like he's just in total control. And I'm giving it that I've shifted the pace there, where Luffy's looking at him through the blades, and they're having that back and forth. I'm giving it this little moment of levity. I'm giving also Luffy his hero moment, and it's that peak and valley. So it's been intensity. We had this little moment here, and then he's just going to ram him in his head. Intensity, and to me, it was just such a fun scene to put together.
No, that was so awesome. I mean, and how about VFX? Like when you're incorporating these elaborate VFX, how does that? I mean, how do you? I guess as you're not having those completed shots yet. I mean, how does that affect maybe the way you cut the scene, and then as you're getting those completed VFX?
So on that scene in particular, Luffy stretches his head and his neck stretches like across the room. So they obviously didn't do that. So what we did was, if I remember correctly, they had Luffy standing there, and then they had like a prosthetic head or like a balloon almost go to the other side of him so you could see the framing. And what we did was we did a paint tool and we just literally painted in a very rudimentary way his neck stretching across the frame and then stretching back. And that was fun. And that's really we do that a lot. sometimes you don't have the ability to temp out an effect like that, even in a rudimentary way. So you're relying on people to use their imagination. And one of the things that I try to do, and I do this with my assistants, is I really try to hone in the sound design. Because if you don't have the visuals there, the sound design for me, especially if you get the correct sound design to illustrate in a sonic way what is happening visually, it can really help tell that story.
Oh, no, I agree. I lean into sound design as well. It helps out so much. And I will say that also my last show, I worked with an action sequence with a watermelon with a machete through it.
Oh, nice.
So standing as a head. So anyway,
my favorite is celery cracking.
there it is. Classic.
Yes, it always works. It always works.
Awesome, Eric. Well, I mean, this is so awesome. Again, thank you so much for sharing this behind the scenes insight. I mean, just again, so much that goes into a cool action sequence. So again, just again, thank you for sharing this insight, Eric.
Thank you for having me. Great talking to you, Joaquin.
Always, man, always.